Next session here this morning is what is your limiting factor? And looks like we have a replacement from what was in the original show guide here. So this morning we have Patrick Brunner, if I pronounce this correctly. Close enough. Who is agronomy manager, product manager with Nature's Alpine Solutions. Patrick has worked in the agriculture industry 21 years and has worked with growers in 3 countries, Canada, Mexico, and the United States, growing many diverse crops. In his many roles of agronomy, sales management, and research, he has helped develop plans for growers to better utilize inputs strategies to improve yields, farm income, and that use fertilizers more efficiently and environmentally safe. He is presently agronomy manager, product manager for Nature's Solution in the U.S., with headquarters in Marion, Ohio. As part of his role, he is tasked with overseeing the agronomy team as well as assisting the sales team with implementing plans to help growers with the ever-changing environment in agriculture and utilization of new technologies in fertility. Please welcome Patrick Brunner.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Just a little background on me. I was born and raised on a farm in one of the I states. Brother Stone's a farm. I've been very lucky. I don't even call it a job, but what I get to do to make money is I get to travel to the U.S. and Canada, talk to growers on many different crops, and just have a discussion on the way we do things. So one thing that always has interested me in my career, I've been a grower, I've been an ag retailer, I've been just in the distribution business. Now I'm with a company that is in manufacturing, so I've been in every seat around the table. But one thing that's very interesting, and this is a study from Iowa State, is 66% of farm expenses is direct or indirectly identified to fertility. Think about that. 66% of the expenses, directly or indirectly, is tied to fertilizer. I love coming to these events because you get to go out there and walk around and we see all these big tractors and I got all this new stuff on them. We got tractors that drive themselves now, and here I'm going to talk about fertilizer. I mean, what is so interesting about fertilizer? Well, hopefully by the time I get done today, I give you some thoughts and some ideas on fertilizer. Is probably a little bit more interesting than it has been in the past. We've done a poor job as an industry bringing new things to growers, to retailers and dealers to improve how we utilize fertilizers. So we're going to talk about a few things today. Just a quick background. Nature's Alpine. For some reason, when we get to the border and then Canada, we're called Alpine. South of the border, we're called Nature's. It's the same company. We got 7 manufacturing plants, 2 in Canada, 5 in the U.S. So we've been around for over 70 years. So one thing just to give everybody just kind of to get you thinking, okay? In 1937, that's by my math 83 years, they were studying fertilizer placement. In 1937, they were studying fertilizer placement. What's one of the big things that we talk about now in the fertilizer industry? Placement. How do we get it applied? Where we get it applied? So we got a novel idea. The industry a few years ago came out with these 4, they call it the 4 R's: right source, right rate, right time, and right place. That's pretty catchy. I mean, haven't we always tried to do that? I mean, we at Nature's, we've been around since 1946, and they had the same idea back then. Marketing's a little different now. We got technology, we got Twitter. We can get the message out there quicker. So, but one thing we cannot ever dispute, and so when we go through this for the next 20 minutes, we're going to talk about things that we know are fact, that nobody will argue, no matter you're an agronomist for our company or anybody else's, that things that actually happen in the field. So we also know we got the right rates. We know what those are because we've got plenty of studies. We show that. We also know that there's a line. You can only put so much and get the value out of it. The right source. We're getting more sources now. We got the dry fertilizer. We got the liquid fertilizer. The last speaker had a different way to get some nutrients on. So we've got all those. We also know these are facts. The way nutrients move into the soil. So we know nitrogen, pretty mobile. Phosphorus is not. Potassium is pretty mobile. One thing we got to understand is every action has an equal reaction. The last guy showed the Malter's chart. And when you apply fertilizer, many of you give this much thought? I mean, we know we throw fertilizer out there, we plant the crop goes gets it. But we also know during that growing season, we have deficiencies. Why is that? We're applying the fertilizer. You know, we know which ones are the most important. We assume the order of importance is N, P, and K. I'm going to argue, probably not. We'll walk through as why we think that needs to be a different chain of thought, the way we've been doing it from the past. So these are things that we know. There's been studies on them. We know that you've got to have a balanced nutrition for that plant to maximize yield. Now, I don't care which crop it is. I mean, I help guys in cotton, peanuts, corn, soybeans, canola, wheat. You've got to have that balance. But we also know there's a certain time you can only afford to put so much on. But what we haven't thought of is I want you to start thinking about efficiency and availability. So the only thing that I have just to show you that I want you to think about is always have people tell me a pound of potassium is a pound of potassium. Is that true? We all apply potassium, we all apply phosphorus, we all apply nitrogen. But is a pound? I want to take you down in Texas in the summer when it's 120. We're going to go to a cotton field, 500 acres across it. I'm going to drop you off at one side. I'll pick you up at the other side. When you get out of the truck, I'm going to hand you 2 bottles of water. If you can't tell, this one's ice. A little bit of water in it. And this one's been in the refrigerator. There's a bottle of water, a bottle of water. Is a pound of potassium, a pound of potassium. It's a pound of phosphorus, a pound of phosphorus. It's not if that plant needs it at that time. So have we put much thought in is when that corn plant, wheat, crop, canola, when it wants that certain nutrient, is it available? And is there ways and things we can do to make it available? So the last speaker showed this too. We know for a fact, and nobody's going to argue this, there's been enough studies, what the yield goals are, what the uptakes are, what the removals are, and percent return to the soil back in your trash or fodder. We've known this. We've had this for probably since 1937. We also know that with all the soil tests being taken, this was that accumulated in 2015, that of all the soil tests taken in Canada and the U.S., in Manitoba alone, 34 of the tests, and there's 2,000 samples are shown in each state, that in Manitoba alone, 34 was below critical levels. That number keeps rising. Same thing happens in the U.S. We apply phosphorus and potassium in the soil. How come our soil tests keep showing that we're going down? So, when I ran retail 20 years ago, how did we fix that? We applied more, right? We just threw more out there, expecting. We drove the soil test up, but what I never thought about, was it available when that plant needed it? And back then, we didn't have a way to fix that problem. Today, we have new technology, even in fertilizer, to help you approve what you're trying to do. And I don't have to show you guys this up here. I mean, when I was a fertilizer broker, it was interesting to me. I did it for 6 months, the most boringest job I ever had, selling dry fertilizer. There's not many people that you can call as a retailer or distributor and buy potash. 2 or 3 in the world. Okay? So think about that. And there's all forms of types of potash. But the trick is getting that balance between the plant and the soil. And by that I mean, how do we get the nutrients that you apply to the soil into that plant? I want you to think, what's the most efficient way that we can get it in that plant? And is it available to that plant when it needs it? So we've got all these different ways to apply it. Now, we put them on through the planters. We even do it dry beforehand. We got foliar, we got side dress, and we got irrigation. We've got every way to apply nutrients now. Are all fertilizers made the same and they look the same? No. There's all these fertilizers out there, and everybody will tell you a gallon's a gallon. Are they really? Think about that. There's 2 analyses in that whole picture. You would not think that by looking at that picture. So let's talk about phosphorus first. Very important nutrient. One thing, the technology in phosphorus is, you got your dry phos, but then also we have liquid. We got poly and ortho. We know ortho is more ready available for that plant at that time. We know poly is going to apply to the soil. Some of it's going to get tied up, and it's going to be what they call slow release. Great technology to a point. Why are we putting on liquid fertilizer when we put it on? Most likely we do it to get the soil, the seed out of the ground, or fix a need at that certain peak time that plant needs it. So one thing Alpine's done, they've done some trials, and this was just this last year in Western Canada. Alpine G24 is a ortho poly, 70% ortho, and the rest is poly. Just because we gave it more ortho, we improved yields. So that technology of poly ortho is proven right there. It's just the way products are manufactured. 7 bushel more, 0.5% drier. So the source does matter. Let's talk potassium. This is where I get excited about, because I've been doing this for a long time, and luckily I've worked for 2 companies in my life after I got out of farming, and each one of them was trying to fix the potassium problem. I got some great slides here later on to talk about potassium. But what does potassium do in a plant? One, it makes it healthier. One, it gives a greater stalk of, strength in the stalk. It maintains the iconic balance and translocation of nutrients. Think about that. So when we sit there and we apply all this fertilizer, how do we get it moving through the plant? I'll sit there, one of my biggest questions I ask growers, what's the most important nutrient you apply to any crop that also is applying nitrogen that has to be available for that plant to utilize the nitrogen you apply? What nutrient is the most important that needs to be available for any crop to utilize the nitrogen when you apply it? You can shout it out. I've heard sulfur before. It's important. I've heard boron. That's important. I'm going to show you some slides, and I'll argue, and we got some data to show potassium is the most important. If you can add potassium when you apply your nitrogen, your efficiency and availability of that nitrogen to the plant increases tremendously. We've got growers putting on less nitrogen now and still driving yields because we're applying potassium when they do it. I'm never going to tell anybody to put on less fertilizer because we know the needs it needs, how many pounds of N it needs to make a pound of grain. We know that. But if we can make that nitrogen more efficient and more available to your plants, well, why wouldn't we do that? Another way to think of potassium is All these nutrients we've talked about, sulfates, your humates, all these new trendy things everybody's talking about, potassium is the nutrient that gets it through the plant. Without potassium, nothing's moving through that plant. So I'm going to show you some slides here in a little bit. The peak time of plants when they need potassium, and most of those times when it needs it, it's dry. That plant's under stress. Well, guess what's not available in soil when it's dry? Potassium. What is one nutrient that will help a crop battle heat and drought stress? Potassium. It helps that plant breathe. It helps get stuff moving through it, and you just get healthier plants. I always call potassium the Uber of the nutrients, because all of the nutrients jump on the back of the potassium to drive it through the plant. Is all potassium the same? Again, I pull out my bottles of water, and whether it's even a liquid company, is a pound or gallon of potassium the same? At Nature's Alpine, we like to think differently. We got a product called BioK. In Canada, it's called K-Tech. It's a potassium acetate. So what is that? It's an inorganic potassium salt plus an organic acid. It's the most soluble, ready available form of potassium you can get, bar none. I want to show you some studies they did in 1986 to show you the absorption rate of acetate. By far, it's got the smallest molecule, which makes it more available to the plants and can get in the plants quicker and faster and more efficiently. So just for some quick references, this is a nice busy chart. This is all the different types of potassium sources. And I'm trying to walk you through this to explain you all that. It's going to get really confusing, so we got a nice little picture. So think of all these bottles. That's the dry active ingredient of the form of potassium. We even got 31818 there. That bottle of water, you can pour in each one of those other bottles, and it's a liquid form then. So you can take 2.5 ounces of water and pour it in that acetate, and it's going to be 100% liquid. What's that mean? When you're foliar feeding, that's a big deal. When you're applying that to a plant, that's a huge deal. And I got some data to show you. But just think about that. If it's available, water soluble, it's got to be more efficient and available to that plant. So you'll hear me and I'll get a little excited when I start showing you some of our data. Just so everybody's clear, we do have two names for one product. If I say Nature's, it's actually Nature's Alpine. BioK is what we call it in the U.S. In Canada, we call it K-Tech, same product. We got a product called K-Fuel, and we got some great data with K-Fuel. Canada's called K24. And Finish Line, F18 up here, it's a micro pack with potassium acetate in it. And I'll explain when we get to the data why that's important. So, one thing we've learned, and I've learned all through my agriculture career, that you only get one shot to make a first impression. If you screw that up, you're not getting back out there, right? So we would try to make our products safe, clean, usable. We can run them through sprayers, irrigation, drip irrigation. They're low salt. They're clean. We got aero applicators putting it on with theirs because it's not sticky. So that's another benefit. One thing that I always like to do, and we all got smartphones now, and I always like to get on Twitter. And I love Twitter because there's a lot of smart people on Twitter tell you what your problems are. But they never tell you how to fix it. We got companies now that's figured out that, row starter actually helps. Corn dry down faster, get out of the ground quicker. They're all starting to get on board. This company even says now potassium in the soil in forms of fertilizers needed to maintain yields. But also 98% of the potassium is tied up in your soil. Again, I get my bottle of water out. When that plant wants that potassium, can it go get it? Is that potassium available when that plant needs it to do what it needs to do. So, acetate uptake on roots. This reason we put acetate in row starters is roots really like acetate. It's real easy for them to bring it in. It promotes that. We've got some studies here with Alpine that I'll show you here in a second. I thought that was yield data. But with our Alpine products, we can go transplant, under row, off row, over row, foliar, and fertigation. One thing that we have forgot to do as an industry, we have forgot about them last two and how to utilize them efficiently and effectively. Now, I'm not here to tell you that you can do all your fertility program through liquid fertilizer, foliar, or fertigation. I'd be crazy to tell you that. We've got some companies telling you that. You don't need dry fertilizer. Just put all liquid on. It's not economically feasible to do that. But we do know that you can apply it at certain times when the need to bridge that gap so that plant then can utilize that fertilizer that's tied up in the ground. I've heard some speakers, and I walked out in the hall today. You know, some will say soil test is great, but you don't need them. Some say tissue samples are great, you don't need those. You need to have a soil test so you can maintain that balance. I also think it's very smart to do a tissue sample so you know what your plant's using. But one thing that's been the dirty little secret that I call in the industry for all these years is when I'd get a tissue sample back 10 years ago and a guy needed phosphorus or potassium, how'd you fix that when the crop was already growing? Well, we can go throw more dry on, hope it rains and washes in, and what's not tied up the plant gets. Now, is that very smart? We've been doing it. I mean, I was guilty of it 20 years ago. We didn't have a good way to fix it. Now we do. I sat in a meeting. I go to a lot of meetings, and I always ask to speak last because I always just like to sit in the back and watch people. And I've had a lot of people get questions, especially seed salesmen. I need to increase yield, especially in corn. What do I got to do? They go, throw more nitrogen on it. Really? Is that smart? I've got to graze more wheat. Throw more nitrogen to it. Well, we've got the chart saying how much it needs. We're already putting that on. Why would we do more? What if there's a way that I can tell you to the nitrogen you're using that we can make it more available to that plant, and that plant can take up more when you put it on? Would we do that? We all buy tractors. We buy it because we got that horsepower limit on it, right? You just don't use 3/4 of it. You guys always push that throttle all the way to the end. We're going to use all that horsepower. So if you're going to throw all that nitrogen on it, let's use it. And if I can help you get that nitrogen in that plant so it can utilize it and take it to yield, let's do it. So, we're not going to argue this. Well, we've already showed that. So, this is a study we've done in Ontario. This is Alpine G24. This is just an in-furrow. Got 210 bushel. Alpine G241. All that we changed in that row starter, we added potassium acetate, K-Tech. Increased to 3 bushel. Same analysis. Why did we increase yield? Because that K-Tech, the Bio-K, potassium acetate, drove the phosphorus, got it in the plant more efficiently. 5 minutes, you're going to speed me up. So what all that did was all we got was more product into that plant. We increased yields. Same thing in the U.S. 4-13-17, big row starter down there. Our Nature's Impulse triple option, same analysis. The only difference is on our potassium side, we're using Bio-K, K-Tech. We're driving the yields, 3 bushel. All we're doing is getting more of that phosphorus. This is jumping on that potassium, getting into that smart plant. So let's get to the good stuff before I get cut out of here. So this is just a cross section of a wheat plant. You can see how the walls of the stalk. The reason that they're bigger on that side is we got more potassium in them. Things flow through the plant better. I don't care which crop it is, corn, cotton, whatever it is. When you can add potassium to it, you're going to get more more of your stuff flowing through it. So I've already talked about the levels. We know that when you can apply potassium at these certain levels, when it's highly needed, why not do it? I got news for you all. All that dry fertilizer we put out there, and I know they're going to say you got plenty there. All these little plants don't have that soil test kit breaking that soil down, pulling out the amount of potassium and phosphorus it needs at that time. It don't happen that way. This is canola. So another study did in Western Canada, Alpine F18 Max. It's our micronutrient, and all it is, we got Bio-K in it, K-Tech in it to drive the nutrients in it and re-increase it. We've all seen this. This is a soybean field. One on that side, potassium. It's short of potassium. 7 days later, we've seen what we did to it. How do we do that? Here's that study done in 1986. Shows the absorption rate of acetate. We've known it since 86. 5 years ago, nature says, why don't we turn that into fertilizer? Why don't we use that to drive nutrients in the fertilizer? So we put it in our micro pack. We're getting more micros in the crops by using that product. Finish line, F18. There's not many products you can see on the market that will get you a 76% win rate on your ROI. The way we're doing that is that potassium acetate driving the yields. This is a potato study. Get healthier potatoes because of it. Impact of corn. Now, real quick, we know that the high uptake on K is right in these days. So that's when you're applying your nitrogen. We're going back to Mulder's chart. Nitrogen efficiency is dependent upon the potassium. We've known this for a long time. We've never been able to fix it. We've never been able to way to do it. Real quick, some of our size studies chest. All we've done on these trials is added K-Flex, which is our K-Tech, to it, and we gained 6.7 bushel. I didn't apply no more nitrogen. I just got more in the plant. I made the nitrogen more efficient. I got more of it in the plant. A study we did in Colorado through a pivot, they put around 5 times, put nitrogen, only put 2 quarts of K-Tech in. You see the yield jump we got with that. Huge response because we spoon-fed it the Biotech or K-Tech throughout the growing season. Third-party retrial, same difference. We added K-Tech or within our finish line to the UAN top dress, gained 2 bushel. And there's not much potassium acetate in that finish line, but we still drove the yield up. How did we do it? We made the nitrogen more efficient and got more of it in the plant. It helps maintain the balance. And before you kick me out of here, I'm done. Thank you.